This episode is sponsored by ODP Business Solutions, built to address all your facility needs. Visit odpbusiness.com today. Many growing companies reach a critical tipping point when the founder or owner can no longer juggle sales, operations, and strategy all at once. They can't even clean their own restrooms, they're so busy. That's when the question arises, is it time to hire a sales manager? Well, today we dig into what that decision really looks like. When is it too soon? When is it too late? And what signs should you look for before making this critical hire? And to do that, I welcome a regular guest, Troy Harrison. Troy knows a thing or two about sales. Happy to have you back on the program, Troy.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello from Fargo, North Dakota. I'm actually up here working with a client today.
Fargo, North Dakota. How's the weather? It's hot here in Ohio. Hot.
Actually, it was really nice yesterday. It was about 80, and as I look out the window, it's actually raining right now. And of course, there's a minor league baseball team in town, and I was trying to decide whether to go last night or tonight. I didn't go last night, and the decision may be out of my hands for tonight. So that may be for another trip.
Well, if you want to get that delicious hot dog, you got to go to the game. So do what you can.
Exactly. That was my dinner plan.
Nice, Troy. Well, I'm glad to have you back. Let's talk about this, the sales manager topic.
Yes.
I know you have things you look at, you analyze with a company when you make suggestions. Can you just talk about that? Tell us what you think when it comes to hiring or not hiring a sales manager.
Well, it is a big question, Jeff, especially when a company's in a growth phase. And as you know, I'm pretty passionate about the role of sales management. I feel like a good sales manager is an integral piece of a company's growth picture, but not all companies do it right. Not all companies hire one that need one, and sometimes companies hire one when they don't need one. First of all, let me define what I mean by a sales manager. A sales manager is not a super salesperson. Sales manager is not the closer. The sales manager is the person who not only administrates the sales team, but leads, coaches, develops, hires, retains, holds accountable the sales team. I am focusing strictly on management duties here. I do not believe that a sales manager should also be assigned a sales territory and quota. And I'll tell you why. The hardest role in business, in my opinion, is the role of a selling sales manager. And yet a lot of companies have this. The problem with being a selling sales manager is that every day that sales manager walks into the office and they think, which am I going to be today? Am I going to sell or am I going to be a person who develops my sales team? You can't do both simultaneously. It is literally almost a split duties day by day. The second problem with it is that the way most companies compensate, they reward more for selling than they do managing the sales team. So usually what happens is that the sales manager ends up spending most of his or her time selling, and then they don't get the results that they need with the other salespeople, which means sooner or later they get fired. Or alternately, they focus on developing the salespeople, and their own sales quota doesn't come up, and they get fired. So I really recommend against that tactic unless it's a very short-term bridge to somewhere else. Now, having said all that, I believe that most companies require a sales manager for every 4 to 12 salespeople. And I realize that's a wide berth there. 4 salespeople, if you have a sales manager that has 4 salespeople that need a lot of attention, that's 1 sales manager. If, on the other hand, if you have a sales team that's of 12 people, where a great majority of them are veterans who maybe need less management inputs, you can get away with having a sales manager for 12 people. Here's when you need that person. You need that person when the work required to get the potential of the salespeople that you have has gone beyond the portion of time that a president or CEO can spend. Because usually what happens is, for a while, the president or CEO will manage the salespeople when they're in the growth mode. But the time available to do that just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And at some point, the president doesn't have the bandwidth needed to manage the increasing demands of the sales team. And that's when you need that sales manager. And you shouldn't shortcut that. Because And which leads to the next question. Okay, how do we pay for a sales manager? A sales manager achieves his or her production through the salespeople. So again, it's not like they're carrying an individual quota. What you have to do is sit down and say, okay, how much can this sales manager reasonably be expected to grow the sales? What's the gross profit generated by that sales growth? And then how does that fit within the overall profit picture? And that is really how you determine whether it's a good, feasible time to hire a sales manager. And here's the thing, in that growth phase, that sales manager is probably not going to produce profit for the first year. So, what you're really doing is looking at the out years and saying, okay, how much profit can we produce through the efforts of that sales manager? But, a good sales manager invests their time in some administrative tasks, activity management, which is to say, looking at the activities that the salesperson is performing and making sure that they're hitting their standards. A great amount of that time is spent in the field with salespeople. I recommend the sales manager spend at least 2 days, three is better, accompanying the salespeople on coaching calls, making those salespeople better. Here's another pitfall. I know I'm throwing a lot out here, but here's another pitfall is having a sales manager who wants to be the super salesperson and who instead of working to develop the salespeople, instead decides that they've got to be the best salesperson in the room. And so they demand that the salespeople have them. When you have a big deal, you make sure I'm there so I can close it. That doesn't help the salespeople at all. At the end of the day, there's only one sales manager and a multiple of salespeople. So the sales manager's job, I've always felt, is to make the salespeople better salespeople than the sales manager. In other words, when I was a sales manager, my goal was never to be the best person on the team. Matter of fact, it was usually to be the worst because I built the salespeople up to be better than I was. That's how to administrate a sales manager's role. And then the president's role becomes managing that sales manager and looking at the compositive activities, the compositive sales growth, the compositive sales results. And now the president is back to just managing one person, which makes their time more efficient.
As the modern workplace evolves, organizations must evolve as well. They need a partner that understands this new world of work. We are that partner. We are ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division. More than just office supplies, ODP is a force for change, helping address technology transformation, sustainability, innovative workspace design, cleaning, break room, and more, making organizations everywhere say, oh, when they see how much more we can do. ODP Business Solutions.
Now, Troy, I have a question.
You bet.
So you deal with a lot of clients, a lot of companies out there that sell.
Yes.
They have a broken sales process. Is a sales manager going to be able to fix that, or should they hire one when everything's going well?
I am a big believer in making hay while the sun shines. Because a lot of times companies get into a roller coaster effect. When everything's going great, they feel like they don't need a sales manager. And then things are going badly. That's when they want to hire someone, but it's hard to make the cash available. I've actually seen companies that only hired sales managers when things were going badly, had that sales manager build the team up, and then fired the sales manager, eliminated the position, and then the sales go back down. They repeat the same cycle again. Ultimately, hiring a sales manager is a strategic decision and not a tactical one. So it should be hired whenever the needs of the company demand, but it is a commitment. It's something, once you hire a sales manager, you're saying this is a valid role within this company. If this person doesn't work for whatever reason, I'm going to hire someone else. And because this is a role that is now part of our company infrastructure. Again, it's always better to do it when things are going well just because there's more cash available. But yeah, if a good sales manager should be able to come in, fix processes, fix people, coach, develop, all those things.
Let's talk about this. Maybe a final question. When a company makes that decision to hire a sales manager, they could hire an outsider who may not know the company. They could promote from within.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Should you take maybe your top salesperson and promote them to manager? Because they probably want that job.
The skills that go into being a top sales manager and the trait, or maybe I should say the traits that go into being a top sales manager and the traits that make up a top salesperson are sometimes different. A lot of top salespeople are motivated by being individual performers, individual contributors. They don't want to depend on anybody else. That is the wrong person to make a sales manager. As sales management is a job of reflected glory. You are achieving your goals, your objectives, and your recognition through the performance of others. Sales, a salesperson, salespeople, that is a job of direct glory. You're achieving your recognition, your results through your own efforts. That can be a hard transition to make. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. Many salespeople can make that. But I always tell companies, if you're trying to figure out which one of your salespeople is the one to promote into sales management, it's not necessarily your top person. The top, a lot of times, the top salespeople are unconscious. They just succeed without really knowing why they succeed or how they succeed. They're just so good. That's probably not the right person because you can't coach that kind of thing. The salesperson who has to think their way through a sales process, and a lot of times that's the person who's at or a little bit above quota every quarter, but may not necessarily be the top person on the board, but they're good because they're a thinking salesperson. They have to remember, okay, have I asked the right questions? Have I made the proposal? They have the mental checklist in their heads. Somebody like that can then turn around and impart those skills to other people. If you're wondering if a salesperson would make a great sales manager, here's what you should do. Buddy them up with a salesperson who is either brand new, preferably brand new, or maybe someone who's running a little bit below and say, look, I'd like your help in mentoring this person. See if you can help them get up to the point where they need to be. See how they actually are at mentoring and developing another salesperson. If they're good, then yeah, maybe that's the person that you should elevate. If they're not good, you know that they're an individual contributor. By the way, the promotion from salesperson to sales manager has the second highest fail rate in business. Highest is floor nurse to charge nurse, because floor nurse to charge nurse takes somebody who is motivated by caring for patients and puts them in an administrative role. The reason, in my opinion, that the promotion from sales rep to sales manager fails is twofold. One, a lot of times companies select the wrong person, just like you said. They're just automatically promoting their top salesperson who may or may not be the right person. And secondly, they don't invest in training that sales manager. And sales management is a skill set that needs to be trained. And honestly, a lot of sales management training sucks. Teaches them to do three things: hire, dictate, fire. I'm going to hire you. I'm going to dictate what to do. And when you don't do what I dictate, I'm going to fire you. The meat of sales management lies in that middle ground of coaching, persuading, and developing.
All right. You make it sound easy and difficult same time to me. I mean, it sounds
It
like,
is. It is both of those things.
all right, Troy, let's wrap up. Final words of advice, and maybe in your final comments, where can we find such a person like this who'd be a good fit?
Um, Assuming that you are not promoting from within. Again, big assumption. And if you can promote from, if you've got that right person in-house, by all means promote that person. I'm always a big backer of promoting from within when it's appropriate and when it will succeed. And if not, think about the level of sales manager that you need, what kind of experience they need to have. And then I like to recruit on LinkedIn and Indeed with a marketing focused ad that markets the position. I like to have a training and onboarding infrastructure in place. Once once you do get going with that, once you do get that person hired, I'd probably be a little bit remiss if I didn't mention that I'm hosting a sales hiring talent summit in Kansas City in August 6th through the 8th. Which would be, I'll be honest, that would be a great tool for anyone who is looking to hire salespeople or a sales manager, because we're gonna walk through an entire process. Okay, that's enough of a commercial for me, but I'm not a big fan of industry hires. You know that. I am a big believer in hiring people that are succeeding in industries that pay less than what your industry pays. There's all sorts of levels of what industry pays. Hire from an industry that pays less, you're elevating them when they get into your job. They have a legitimate reason to want to go to work for you.